Hi kiddos. Today we're going to learn about the functions of a verb. A verb tells the action of the subject. It can be past, present, or future tense. The tense of a verb tells the time of the action. First, we're going to talk about past tense. First, what I want you to do is get out your learning journal and turn to the next blank page. In your learning journal, create a T-chart that has 3 columns. At the top of each column, write past, present, future. If you need to pause the video to do that, you can do that. When you're ready, go ahead and hit play. Now let's look at past tense. A past tense verb shows an action that happened earlier. To make some verbs past tense, you add ed. Here are some examples. Congress changed the voting age to 18 in 1971. Notice that we added ed to make the word change past tense. Number 2, people shouted out their votes in colonial times. Notice that we added ed to the word shout to make it past tense. Number 3, later, citizens recorded their votes on paper. Notice that we changed the verb record to recorded by adding ed to make it past tense. If a verb ends with a consonant, vowel, consonant, you would see that as CVC, double the consonant before adding ed. Let's look at some examples. Number 1, they planned the city festival. Plan ends with a consonant, vowel, consonant, L-A-N. So you double the consonant, N, and you add ed. Planned, P-L-A-N-N-E-D. Number 2, another person stopped to ask a question. The word stop ends with a consonant, vowel, consonant. So you double the consonant and add ed. Stopped, S-T-O-P-P-E-D. Number 3, she dropped her vote into the box. Drop ends with a consonant, vowel, consonant. So you double the consonant and you add ed. Dropped, D-R-O-P-P-E-D. Now, you've heard this ending rule before. If a word ends with a consonant and Y, change the Y to I. And if you want to make it past tense, you add ed. So if a verb ends with a consonant and Y, change the Y to I and add ed. Here are some examples. Number 1, past presidents studied federal issues. Study ends with a consonant Y. S-T-U-D-Y. Change the Y to I and add ed. Studied. S-T-U-D-I-E-D. Number 2, Arkansas occupied 4 congressional seats in 2019. Occupy ends with a Y, so you change the Y to I and add ed to make it past tense. Occupied. O-C-C-U-P-I-E-D. Number 3, my cousin married her in May. Married, to make it past tense, we change the Y to I and add ed because marry, M-A-R-R-Y, ends with a consonant Y. So now you have the past tense verb married, M-A-R-R-I-E-D. And of course, some verbs are irregular. This means that we completely change the spelling of the word. For example, people made important decisions by voting. Made is the past tense irregular form of make. Some people wrote paper votes instead of using a computer. Wrote is the past tense irregular form of the word write. Mr. Anderson saw many Arkansas parks. Saw is the past tense form, is the irregular past tense form of the word see. A present tense verb shows an action that's happening now. To make a verb present tense, you must know these ending rules. Most verbs end in a S. Change becomes changes. Check becomes checks. Allow becomes allows. All we had to do was add an S. If a verb ends in a consonant and Y, change the Y to I and add ES. For example, fly. Change the Y to I and add ES. Hurry. Change the Y to I and add ES. Lobby. Change the Y to I and add ES because those verbs ended with a consonant Y. If a verb ends with a S, SH, CH, or X, add ES. Discuss becomes discusses. Add ES because discuss ends with an S. Teach becomes teaches. You add ES because teach ends with a CH. And toss becomes tosses because the verb toss ends with an S, you add ES. A future tense verb shows an action that will happen in the future or later. It's very easy to identify a future tense verb because it always has the word will in front of it. For example, every 4 years, citizens will choose the President of the United States. Will choose is the future tense verb. Number 2, soon people will vote on home computers. Will vote is the future tense verb. Number 3, our president will greet other world leaders at the White House dinner. Will greet is the future tense verb. Another function of a verb is the degrees of certainty. A question that you can ask yourself is, are you sure or not sure? Let's look at these two sentences. It will rain tomorrow. It might rain tomorrow. It will rain tomorrow tells us that we're pretty certain that it's going to rain. It might rain tomorrow. Might rain tells us that we are uncertain. We are not sure if it's going to rain or not. Let's look at these two examples. I knew the answer. I guessed at the answer. I knew the answer. Knew tells us that we are pretty certain. We are sure of the answer. I guessed at the answer. Guessed tells us that we're not sure. We're not certain about the answer. Let's look at these two examples. I saw him take my pencil. Saw tells us that we are pretty certain, that we are sure he took our pencil. I suspect he took my pencil. Suspect tells us that we're not sure. We're not certain about that. So as you can see, there are different degrees of certainty about verbs, and that's another function of a verb. Okay, kiddos, we just talked about the functions of a verb. So now let's do some practice.